Hi again, and welcome back to the new section. In this section, I'm going to teach you about control flow in Kotlin. Normally, codes are executed one after the other in a linear fashion, in the order in which they're written. For example, in this code, we have a variable called a and initialized with 10, and another variable called b that is initialized with 20. And they will be printed by using the println functions. As you see, we're using a string templates in this code. Okay, in this app, the entry point is the main function. So when we run the code, it starts to run from this line. What happens after the code starts to run is that this line is executed first. Then this line will be executed. Then this line, so it prints this message, a is equal to 10. And then this line will be executed. So it prints this message, b is equal to 20. Let me prove it. I can prove it by using the Android Studio's debugger tool. To use the debugger tool, we need a breakpoint. A breakpoint is a way to temporarily pause the execution of the code and stepping over code line by line. To place a breakpoint, click on the leftmost column in the code editor called gutter, like this. Next to the line where you want code execution to pause. This red circle shows a breakpoint set on a particular statement. You can delete it by clicking on it again. Okay, now that we have a breakpoint here, click on debug instead of run, or click on this green debug icon. Okay guys, as you see, the debugger tab is selected at the bottom of the screen instead of the console tab. The debugger tab displays debugging information. Now the code execution stops here at the first breakpoint. Note that this line is not executed yet. So press the F7 key or this icon to execute this line. Now this line is executed. You can look at the current state of the variable values here in the debugger tab. As you see, it shows the a variable has a value of 10. As you see, this line is ready to execute. So if I press the F7 key again or click on this icon again, so now this line is executed and the b variable has a value of 20. Okay, now this line is ready to execute. Let's back to the console tab and press the F7 key. Okay, as you see, when I press the F7 key, this line will be executed. So the message a is equal to 10 is displayed here. Let me press the F7 key again. As you see, by pressing the F7 key again, the message b is equal to 20 is displayed here. Okay, click on the stop button to stop debugging. So as a conclusion, codes are executed one after the other in a linear fashion in the order in which they're written. This process is called sequential execution. But most of the times, we need decision-making expressions to control the code execution. For example, suppose that we need a code that prints the largest number. So we should use a decision-making expression. In Kotlin, there are different types of decision-making expressions. Let me teach you the first one. If expression. If expression is one of the most popular instructions among the decision-making expressions. The if expression executes or skips a sequence of codes depending on the conditions. In order to get a better understanding, Suppose that we have two numbers and we want to print the larger number between A and B. In this case, we should use the if expression. The usage of the if expression is as follows. Type the if keyword, open and close parentheses, and open and close brackets. Now, inside the parentheses, write this expression, A greater than B. And inside the body of the if expression, I mean here, write this code. Println A is greater than B. Also, if B is greater than A, then print this message. Print B is greater than A. Now let's run the code. As you see, it only displays this message, B is greater than A, because 20 is larger than 10. So by using the if expression, the compiler executes the code that is necessary and skips the code that is not necessary to execute. Let's debug the app. So make sure you have a breakpoint here and you select debug instead of run. Okay, after running in the debug mode, it stops at the first breakpoint. So press the F7 key or click on this icon to execute the first line. Press the F7 key again, and as you see, A is equal to 10 and B is equal to 20. When I press the F7 key, again, the expression inside the parentheses will be executed. This expression is called a condition. A condition must evaluate to either true or false. In this case, the if expression checks if A is greater than B. This condition, that is a Boolean expression, returns a Boolean result. It returns false. When the if condition returns false, the compiler will not execute its body. So the code execution transfers to after the if body. Let's press the F7 key or click on this icon. As you see, the if body is not executed and the code execution transfers to after its body. This is called a transfer of control. As you see, nothing is printed. But here in this if expression, the if condition returns true because B is greater than A. 20 is greater than 10. If the condition is true, so the body will be executed. So if I press the F7 key, the code execution moves inside brackets. And by pressing this icon again, this line will be executed, so this message will be displayed here. Okay. Let's stop debugging and clear the console. Now if I change the numbers and debug the code again, this time this if expression evaluates to true and run its body. So press F7, F7, and by pressing F7 again, its body will be executed. So this message, A is greater than B, will be displayed here. Also, I expect this if expression evaluates to false and ignores its body to run. So by pressing this icon, transfer of control happens here. Okay. The beauty of the if expression is that we can combine these two if expressions if they are related together. We can use if-else expression instead of two separate if expressions. So look at the syntax. If condition and else run this block of code. Okay, this is the syntax of an if-else expression. Let's rewrite the code by using an if-else expression. So instead of the second if expression, type else. If A is greater than B, then print A is greater than B. Else print B is greater than A. Now by using this syntax, statements inside the body of else expression are executed if the condition is evaluated to false. Let's run the code again. So this syntax means if the condition in the if parentheses is met, executes this block of code. If not, then executes this block of code instead. One point to note is that the if expression may have an optional else block. So the else expression is optional. Now that you know the whole idea about the if expression, let's talk about the details. As I said before, a condition is an expression that can be true or false. Conditions in if expressions can be formed by using the equality operators and relational operators. The equality operators are these operators: equal to and not equal to. So you can use these two operators instead of greater than operator. Also, we can use relational operators that are greater than, that you already know about it. We have used it here. Less than operator, greater than or equal, and less than or equal. Okay, so we can use relational operators or equality operators to make conditions. For example, we can check if A is equal to B like this. We can check if A is not equal to B like this. We can check if A is greater than B, if A is less than B, if A is greater than or equal to B, and if A is less than or equal to B. And finally, let's talk about the else if expression. Note that we have also another form of the if expression. The syntax is like this. If condition 1 and else if condition 2. It means if this condition is true, then run this block of code. Else if this condition is true, then run this block of code. So When we have only one condition to test, if else works fine. But sometimes we have multiple conditions, so we should use this syntax. If we have more than two conditions, then we should use an extra else if here. For example, we can check condition number 3. If we have more than 3 conditions, then we should add another else if, and so on. As an example, let me ask you, what if two numbers are equal? For example, suppose that we have two numbers, A that is 20 and B that is 22. And let's check it out. And let's use if expression. If A is greater than B, then print A is greater than B. Else print B is greater than A. If I run this code, users will be confused because B is not greater than A. So let's use another condition here. Else if B is greater than A, then print this message. Okay, as you see, nothing is displayed because these two numbers are equal. So we will need to use another condition. If A is equal to B, then print A is equal to B. Okay, now this time the code works fine. As the final note, an else expression is always at the end of a conditional expression. So you can use an else here if it's needed. In the next videos, I have provided for you some exercises, so try to do them.